Hi, and welcome to the latest video from the Spark Disability Media Resources Hub. Today we're going to be talking about service agreements, and in particular, 4 things that you might find helpful to keep in mind when you're negotiating agreements with providers. So, you've identified the service providers that you want to work with, whether that's an individual support worker or a larger company with a range of support workers that they employ. The next step is to organise a service agreement. So what is a service agreement? Well, a service agreement is essentially exactly what it says in the name. It's an agreement, whether written down or as part of a conversation with a provider, between the person looking for support and the providers, either as a company or an individual support worker. The service agreement covers the supports to be provided by the provider to the person at the centre of the plan, and also how much money and how that money will be paid to the provider for the services that they offer. So, of our 4 things to consider in this video today, the first one is a service agreement is a contract between the person requiring support and their service provider. Point number 2 is that a service agreement can be written down or it can be agreed verbally. But either way, it still is a contract and it still represents a valid agreement. It's often helpful to have it written down so that there's a record that people can refer back to. But a verbal agreement is still an agreement. Point number 3 is that a service agreement needs to cover, at the very least, the following questions. First of all, what kind of service is the person at the centre of the plan actually requiring? Is it, for example, a cooking or a meal service at home? Is it transport to go out in the community? Or perhaps it's a kind of therapy service, physiotherapy or occupational therapy. How much is the service going to cost? Is it going to be charged per hour? Is it going to be charged per week? How is this going to be decided? How will the service be paid for? So, depending on the way a person's NDIS funding is managed, that might be by way of an invoice from the provider to their client, the person at the centre of the plan. It might be an invoice to a plan management agency, or it might be that the person at the centre of the plan is paying for the service through a service booking as part of their NDIS plan. When will the agreement end? So this is an important question. There can be, just as there can be different lengths of NDIS plans, there can also be different lengths of service agreements. It might be that if someone wants to trial a provider, that perhaps a shorter service agreement might be appropriate, say 2 or 3 months, rather than signing up for a 12-month or a 2-year agreement from the very beginning. What's the process for changing the agreement if needed? What happens if the client needs to change the services that are provided, needs more hours of support or less hours of support as the service agreement goes on? And finally, what happens if there is a dispute between the client and the service provider? What mechanism can be put in place to help resolve any problems? The fourth point to think about is making sure that the client's rights, your rights as a consumer, are protected. Part of that is knowing about the different organisations and the roles they have to play with regards to service agreements and your arrangements with providers. So the NDIA makes decisions about people's disability support funding, but it doesn't take any responsibility for making sure that providers or clients stay and stick with their obligations as part of a service agreement. The NDIA provides the money. The NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission works with providers and sets the rules for providers to ensure that the service that they offer to people is of good quality, is safe, and is respecting of that person's individual rights. So you could say that the Quality and Safeguards Commission is the regulator, is the auditor for disability services offered through the NDIS. The third organisation with a role to play in terms of enforcing service agreements is the ACCC. Now, the ACCC works specifically around investigating the practices used by businesses to advertise their services and the way that they operate their services day to day. The ACCC can also sometimes bring legal action against businesses, which might include NDIS service providers, if the way that they're doing business is considered to be a large enough breach of Australian consumer law. The NDIA, of course, is the National Disability Insurance Agency, and the ACCC is the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. So these are the different organisations and the roles they have to play around enforcing the provisions in a service agreement. What does that look like in practice? Okay, in the day-to-day, putting together your services, making arrangements to get the support that you need. Well, if you have a problem, if you're unhappy with your NDIS plan, you talk to the NDIA. If the money is not right, if the way it's set up is not quite right for you, you talk to the NDIA. If you're unhappy, for example, with how a provider has treated you during a shift when they were working with you, you talk to the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission. If you've ever felt pressured by a provider to maybe to agree to a service that you don't really feel like you need, talk to the ACCC. So, how to get in touch with these organisations. The phone number for the NDIA is 1800 800 110. For the Quality and Safeguards Commission, it's 1800 035 544. And for the ACCC, it's 1300 302 502. To recap on the 4 things that you need to know about service agreements. Point number 1, a service agreement is a contract. Point number 2, that contract can be either written or a verbal agreement. Either way, it still has effect. Point number 3, a service agreement should cover particular aspects of the service that the person is going to receive, like cost, timing, type of service, how to change the arrangement, and how to cancel the agreement if needs be. Finally, the 4th thing that you need to know is what to do if you feel that your rights as a consumer have been affected adversely by a service provider. you can contact the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission or the ACCC. Thanks for watching as always. I hope this video has been useful and informative for you in your negotiations and your dealings with service providers. Please remember, as always, that if you need assistance contacting service providers and discussing the services that you need, you can contact Spark on 1300 921 732, or you can email us at hello@sparkdisability.com.au. In the meantime, click subscribe to receive notification of new Spark videos as they become available. And see below for more information about the topic that we've been discussing today. Thanks again, and I hope you find your Spark soon.